He's editor-in-chief of Breitbart News and a New York Times best-selling author. And on this podcast, he brings deep research, prescient analysis, and world-class guests. He's Alex Marlow, and this is The Alex Marlow Show.
All right, welcome to The Alex Marlow Show. It's a Prekend show today. It's going to be coming out, that time, after lunch on Thursday, before lunchtime on Friday. Best part of the week, and many would argue. So we got a lot going on today. I will say, those of you who care about such things, I was on Laura Ingram's show last night. I can say I was cooking. It was a good hit. And the topic was lawfare. So this is going to be the big thing throughout the year. And I do want to recommend that to people, because there is something that I think we came to together, me and Laura, during the process of the show. And this is the playbook that I think the left has figured out, so that this is what they're going to use to try to impeach and remove Trump. I was thinking about the math here, because we saw just a couple of days ago that Judge Boasberg finding probable cause to hold the Trump administration in contempt for violating that deportation order. Recall how this went down, that this is basically a Texas case, and it was filed in a D.C. court. It was filed in a D.C. court in the middle of the night on a Friday, when they knew specifically Judge Boasberg would be the one in the morning to pick it up and field it. Boasberg was ostensibly on vacation or on some sort of a break, yet he was there. He grabbed the case. It became his case, and he immediately filed an injunction, but he did it slightly too late, and the planes were in the air en route to El Salvador with a bunch of criminal illegal aliens in the planes. So this is what went on, and the left, the Boasbergs of the world, the lawfare crowd, what they did is they were very animated that Trump had created some sort of a constitutional crisis. He defied a court order. But those of you who've been paying attention closely know that Trump has not defied any constitutional orders. He's not created a constitutional crisis because he's not defied any court orders to this point. And I spoke to Alina Habba about this. I spoke to her about it on the show and also offline. And she said that their intention is not to violate the court orders. They don't want to do that. I don't know how sustainable this is, though. In this case, which has been the most high-profile one to date, where the left almost got him to do it, Stephen Miller played it perfectly with the Alien Enemies Act, so he was able to get the planes out of the country in time. But will he always be able to have an ace up his sleeve, a rabbit in his hat, some sort of genius maneuver? And so what they're counting on is that there will be a moment where he doesn't have a genius maneuver and no one else in the administration does as well. And they catch Trump doing something where he has to go against one of the court orders, and they will use it as a basis for impeachment. And they can ride that impeachment into the midterms. They can win the midterms and then try to remove him from office. And that's the goal. And it's clear to me that that's what's going on. And they're not doing this with some sort of neutral group of people. They're doing this with the Soros-funded judges who are running the lawfare in this country. That is what's going on. And we learned about more of these judges as more injunctions have taken place over the last couple of days. In the United States, District Judge Indira Talwani, who's appointed by Obama. She's got past ties to Democrats. She ruled against an immigration enforcement effort in the first Trump administration, and earlier this week blocked President Trump from deporting migrants who were released in the U.S. under President Biden's parole pipeline. Now, the parole pipeline, those of you who are familiar with myself at Breitbart, this is the catch and release on steroids. This is the extended catch and release, where the crowd that have been infiltrating our country through our open border, what they've done is they've figured out a way to get expedited processing via a parole, a humanitarian parole that was put in place by Joe Biden to specifically undermine the border enforcement mechanisms that Donald Trump had put in place in the fourth year of his first administration. And so it's basically glorified catch and release, where you come in the country, you request asylum, you request some other form of parole, and while the processing takes place, you're released into the country. Trump, of course, wants to stop this. He has had an executive order to do so. And this judge, appointed by Obama with ties to left-wing activists who has enforced open borders policies in the past, she had made this decision that Biden's parole pipeline is still in place. Thus, the Trump administration is prevented from deporting 530,000 migrants who have no legal status in the United States. So that is the objective right now. That is what they're going for. And that is the lawfare system in place. That's their superstructure. These Soros-funded groups are behind so many of these NGOs. They're the ones who are providing the organizational backbone. John Binder had a big piece for us at Breitbart from earlier in the week that George and Alexander Soros, his son, they have these nonprofits, non-governmental organizations, and they're the ones who are filing the lawsuits. These lawsuits get targeted to specific courts like the Boasberg Court, specific judges, courts where they know things are favorable for them, and they don't have to have any geographical connection to the courts and the districts in which they're filing, because that's how Congress made it. Those are the rules that Congress wrote. You don't have to have any geographical connection to the area where you're filing, and that is going to gum up all of the works for this administration. So I talked about this with Laura, so you guys check that out online. But in the meantime, the injunctions keep coming from the left-wing judges. We learned another judge blocked a freeze at the EPA. Lee Zeldin told me he expected this was coming. There was the big freeze of EPA and energy funds. It's a former Democrat activist, Judge Mary S. McElroy, who twice blocked Donald Trump's efforts to freeze the EPA and Energy Department and other grants. She has a history of being a Democrat activist. Sean Moran writes for us at Breitbart News. She issued an injunction 2 days ago as we're recording this, ruling in favor of environmental groups who claim the president unlawfully froze grants for projects that combat alleged climate change, reduce pollution, and modernize American infrastructure. But all that's Green New Deal stuff. So Trump blocked it, and she blocks Trump. So she's also someone who has ties to diversity, equity, inclusion groups and initiatives. Her whole history is being a part of the left-wing ecosystem. The media is broken. For decades, big cable and legacy media have filtered information to hide the truth. But thanks to podcasts and new media like this show, the truth can break through, providing voices and views the legacy outlets block from the air. But big cable still has one major way to control information, and that's access. They do this by limiting access to something called spectrum, the invisible airwaves that power affordable wireless internet, and by forcing you into their bundles, keeping independent media out of reach. Trump and Republicans in Congress have a chance to do something big here by making more spectrum available and breaking big cable's stranglehold on information. So there's a couple things you could do to find out more. You can go to endthecableopoly.org. That's endthecableopoly.org for more information about how to make more spectrum available. And if you're convinced, you should call your senators and your members of Congress and say, hey, why don't you work with President Trump and try to make more spectrum available? So endthecableopoly.org to find more. Even going back to when she was a high school student, she was volunteering for Democrats. She volunteered at a DNC when she was a young person, and she served as a campaign manager for a left-wing attorney general and was a member of the Democratic Party in Rhode Island. So it's just a card-carrying leftist. And these are the people who are blocking Trump's agenda. And we're supposed to assume that this is okay, that Trump needs to get there's 670 something odd district judges that all have the ability to veto elements of Trump's administration. And solving this problem is going to be crucial for his legacy and for the preservation of American democracy as we know it. Because when you democratically elect a president and he's not allowed to do anything without some rogue judge standing up to him, that is not a democracy. That is not people voting and getting the will of the people. That is something completely different entirely. It's totally outrageous, and we do not have we're not totally aligned on how to push back. It is going to take some time to do this, but it's important to flag all this stuff. Yeah, more Lawfare news. D.C. Circuit Court of Appeals stayed an injunction from District Court Judge Tanya Chutkan, who said that the administration couldn't claw back unspent lawful funds from Citibank, where Joe Biden hid them on his way out the door. So that's really important. So this is from a guy named Phil Holloway reading his Twitter account, writes at Town Hall. So it is this back and forth between judges getting all this stuff through the legal system. This is where the Democrats think they can do this. Miller pointed this out. We played the audio on the show that if you give due process, you afford due process to every illegal alien in this country, it will take hundreds of years to adjudicate all of their individual cases. It'll back up the entire court system. And then they can continue to do these injunctions against Trump. Those won't get through the courts. And even if they're going to get overturned, it's going to burn all this clock so Trump can't enforce the things that he wants to do. So it is really, really tough to know where this is going, but this is the left's absolutely their best weapon that they have against Trump and his administration right now. It's to be taken seriously. I know all of you are doing so, but I like to let you know when to be outraged, and this is absolutely one such time to be outraged. The lawfare must come to an end, and we're going to have to work on it together because there's no easy ones here. All right, another one that is really worthy of your outrage. It's one that I've avoided for this point because it's such an obvious one, and it's so depressing, and it really exacerbates a lot of the horrible tensions in this country. But I'll address it at this point. But there is a young man, 17 years old, I guess, I think is his age, named Karmelo Anthony, who is accused. I mean, if you guys have seen the reports, it's a lot of evidence here. He's been accused of stabbing to death a 17-year-old boy, a football player named Austin Metcalf, stabbed him in the heart in the bleachers, I guess, at some sort of a game. Metcalf died in his brother's arms, his twin brother's arms. And Karmelo had no criminal past, I guess, but I guess he'd been photographed with firearms and stuff like that. It didn't seem like a savory guy. He had a bail set for $1 million, and then his bail was reduced to a level where he could get out of prison. He's raised, this as of a couple of days ago, hundreds of thousands of dollars on a Give, Send, Go account for his legal defense, even though all the evidence is pointing to not innocence, shall we suggest. And this is way overwhelmed any amount of funds that have been raised for the white individual, Austin Metcalf, that was murdered in this scenario. And the Karmelo Anthony, if you can't tell by the name, Karmelo Anthony is a black guy. And this is a real racial flashpoint here, because the fact that there's been this outpouring, not of condemnation, not people out there saying that this is what divides a country along racial lines, is when you have what appears to be a scenario where a black student stabs a white person to death, basically out of nothing, just out of pure cold blood, pure rage and anger. It's sort of thing that does divide a society. And instead, what we're seeing is an outpouring of monetary generosity to the apparent murderer's family. And now we're seeing photos of Anthony with new shoes, a new car, a new house. And I haven't confirmed every detail of this. It's very depressing to go through all this because it is deeply divisive. But I saw a clip of his attorney giving a press conference, which was so outrageous. I got to play this for you guys, and it is truly depressing stuff, but let's play it.
And all I'm going to say, so it don't be asked later, is that was disrespectful and just shows you all the character who is not invited. He knows that is inappropriate to be near this family.
So this is someone named Dominique Alexander, who's the attorney for Karmelo Anthony, and he's talking about the father of the murdered boy. So Austin Metcalf's father showed up at a press conference, and the lawyer calls it disrespectful for him to have shown up. I got to play it again just so you guys understand how truly insane this is.
And all I'm going to say, so it don't be asked later, is that was disrespectful and just shows you all the character who is not invited. He knows that is inappropriate to be near this family, but he did it. And so I say to people, actions speak louder than words. Okay? What he has failed into is the political operatives that want to make this thing a political thing of hate, yet bigotry, and yet racism. We have conservative operatives that have been posting nonstop about this case.
Well, we post nonstop about it because we've been conditioned in America for the last decade in this country that anytime a black person dies at the hands of a white person, the only explanation can be racism. And the examples are myriad. I mean, the George Floyd one is the most obvious. It wasn't a cop suppressing a guy who was high on drugs and was very big and was acting erratically. Other examples are the George Zimmerman case, where George Zimmerman, I guess, killed Trayvon Martin, but there was a fight that ensued, and George Zimmerman, who was not a white guy, was called a white guy, and then he was called a white Hispanic when he realized he was Hispanic. And then the media covered up that Zimmerman had gashes on the back of his head, that a fight had broken out, and they had fought and squabbled before Trayvon Martin was killed. And so all of that lying, all of that media going out of their way to try to make it so that the white person is always a bad person in this case. And then you have an instance where a promising young boy, 17 years old, gets murdered in his brother's arms out of nowhere, apparently by a black person. That does make people want to acknowledge the hypocrisy in the way our society treats these things. And we are going completely insane here if any attorney thinks that it is inappropriate or outrageous to A, have the parent of the murdered person at a press conference, and B, that people would show some rage online about this. This is really a disturbing tone to me, because the tone should be, we understand. We understand that in this country, the racial tensions have not improved in recent years. I blame Barack Obama for this. I've been gone on a very long diatribes on this. Is diatribe the right word? Diatribe's too negative. But I spoke about it. I was interviewed about this on PBS when we were talking about how divided they did a documentary on a division within the country. And I pointed the finger right at Obama and the Trayvon Martin thing in particular. He had an opportunity to say, this is not what the media said. And this was a one-off incident that has nothing to do with race. And it was very sad. We need to move on. Instead, Obama indulged all the racial tensions. He said that if I had a son, he'd look like Trayvon. So that's where it all started. Now we're here. And until we have a frank conversation about these things, that whether or not that if we act like it's outrageous to point out that there could perhaps be increasing racial tensions where people are targeting white people, then we're not going to be able to have a society where the races are going to coexist at the ideal level, which is perfectly. So a lot of neighborhoods in this country, racial tensions are non-existent. Races interact seamlessly. But clearly other parts of the country it's not true. And we're told that it's really the white guys who are the problem here. So when a black guy stabs a white kid, then people are going to talk about it. So pretty outrageous to suggest that the dad can't even be there when you guys are all posting on social media in new houses and with new cars, with new shoes. So sad stuff. I tried to avoid it, but it just got hit a critical mass. I had to bring it up. So bad stuff. This is what a bad country would look like, is when a murderer murders someone, then, and again, it's all accused at this point, it's all alleged. Nothing's been adjudicated. But it's a bad country that would reward the murderers. And we're doing this consistently. We did this with Luigi. I play for you Taylor Lorenz, who was... she was doing just absolutely having a sexual fetish for Luigi Mangione. And she was doing this on CNN, the former Washington Post commentator who tracks the online ecosystem from the left. So young people like Luigi Mangione, they think that him murdering a healthcare CEO in cold blood is justifiable in many cases. What happens when a culture starts trading truth for comfort? Live Not by Lies is a bold new docuseries by Angel Studios. Uncovers soft totalitarianism quietly taking root in the West through censorship, digital surveillance, and the erosion of free thought. Inspired by Rod Dreher's best-selling book, the series features firsthand accounts from the survivors of communism who recognize warning signs because they've lived through them before. Their stories are raw, deeply moving, and they draw parallels between yesterday's regimes and today's cultural climate. This isn't just about history. This is about right now and what's happening to all of us, and why we should not stay silent and what we risk if we do. Live Not by Lies is a challenge to every viewer to reject conformity at the expense of our conscience and to stand firm in faith, family, and freedom. Streaming now on angel.com. You can go to angel.com/Marlowe. Check out my friends at the Angel Guild. You visit today, and that's how you can get Live Not by Lies right now. Angel.com/Marlowe. Troubling stuff. So we've also lost faith in law and order. and that's why the lawfare ties into this, the crime in our cities ties into this. We need to restore law and order, we need to restore democracy, all of these things to give people faith in the system. There's not enough faith in the system right now. And that really could cause a lot of problems for us. Do I have a clip of Lorenz? I thought I had one set aside. She was on Hannity's show. I guess I didn't send aside. We'll have to do that next time. But she was on Hannity's show, and it was pretty wacky. But good for her for going on, and good get by Hannity. All right, next most wild story of the day. The left continues to want to die on this hill for Kilmar Abrego Garcia, who is not a Maryland man. He is an El Salvadorian man who got deported to El Salvador. And maybe he should have had perhaps a little bit more paperwork that he could have gone through before he got deported. But he had no right to be here. And we have to not dwell on this stuff too much, because for every Kilmar Abrego Garcia, there is a MS-13 violent gang member who is part of the culture of violence and drugs that have flowed into our country. And we need to be unafraid to crack down this stuff. I think you guys are with me on this, but it still goes on. Chris Van Hollen, who is a Democrat, just completely, I think, embarrassed himself, Senator from Maryland, who he went to El Salvador and to pander, I guess, to Kilmar Abrego Garcia and people who like him. Let's play this audio.
I just landed at the airport in San Salvador a little while ago. I'm now en route into the city, looking forward to meeting with the team from the American Embassy. And I do want to thank our Foreign Service officers and the whole team at this embassy and embassies around the world for all the good work they do on behalf of our country. I'm proud to co-chair the bipartisan Foreign Service Caucus that stands up for the men and women who are serving our country overseas and at home in the State Department. After that, I hope to meet with some high-level government officials from El Salvador. As I've said before, the goal of my visit is to talk to people here about the release of Kilmar Abrego Garcia. I told his wife and his family I would do everything possible to bring him home, and we're going to keep working at this until we're successful. I also hope to have the chance to meet with him, but we'll have a better idea if that works out a little later on.
Yeah, this guy doesn't sign the Laken Riley Act. He doesn't want to protect any Americans who were murdered by illegal aliens. He doesn't want to do anything to secure our border at all. But if there's one illegal alien who might not be a horrible guy, even though he's got criminal background, I mean, he's got ties to to MS-13, according to the Trump administration, that he's got a prior criminal record, that he had gang tattoos allegedly. Look, I can't confirm this myself. I haven't examined him, but this is what we're being told. And if that's what's going on, then why do you feel like this is the hill to die on? And I'll tell you why it connects with what I opened the show with. They're dying on this hill because they think that they're eventually going to get Trump by defying one of the judges, and they're laying tracks for eventual impeachment. And then if they can leverage the impeachment into winning the impeachment efforts to winning Democrat primary and turning that political momentum into a removal from office, or at least taking up all of Trump's time so we compromise the entire term. That's the goal. And so that's why they're championing these people. There's method to their madness. It's not totally crazy. James Carville, who I don't think is right all the time, but he said the top agenda item needs to be bring back Kilmar Abrego Garcia. They think they've got something here. I don't think they do. I don't think this plan is going to work, but just know that their plan is intentional. They're not joking around here. They want to get this guy back, and they want to continue to raise awareness because they're laying tracks for showing the American public that Trump is going to defy the courts in order to deport people. That's what they want. And if Trump slips up at all, they're going to be there to pounce on him. Let me play. I got one more from Van Hollen. Let's play this.
So I asked the vice president if Abrego Garcia has not committed a crime, and the U.S. courts have found that he was illegally taken from the United States, and the government of El Salvador has no evidence that he was part of MS-13. Why is El Salvador continuing to hold him in CICOT?
Entonces, si no hay pruebas contra el señor Abrego García de que entró ilegalmente a los Estados Unidos o que él sea miembro de la
Yeah, he's taking a question now in Spanish. That's why it's let's see if we can scoot ahead here.
The answer was that the Trump administration is paying El Salvador, the government of El Salvador, to keep him at CCOT.
Yeah. Okay. So, but Trump is paying to keep him there because he's an illegal alien. And we have got to have the strong stomach here, as I've been saying. We got to fight through it. Not every deportation is going to be perfect. Not every Doge cut is going to be perfect. But we're having a new normal. The new normal is you're not allowed to come into the country illegally. If you have any sort of gang ties to criminal alien gangs, then you're going to be the fast track for deportation. And if somehow there's some perfect condition where the person actually is some sort of a saint, then maybe we can right the wrong eventually. But it cannot be a priority, and we cannot give an inch here. Absolutely not. Hold the line, and I'm optimistic things will continue to get better because there's a lot of good that's happening. You got illegal alien arrests at the border falling to 263 per day during Trump's first 2 months. That's down 94% from last year. And we want the arrest low because it means people are not even trying to come in. So even though you would think arrest low might mean that there's less enforcement, no, there's less necessity to enforce. That's the issue. We got a angel mom reacting. I want to play this. This was interesting. Let's check this out.
Beautiful.
Call a dear friend.
She's a beautiful woman. She's been through hell.
Well, if you're missing on the screen is she's hugging President Trump. There's an angel mom who has a meeting with Trump because of the Chris Van Hollen stuff and the championing of an illegal alien alleged gang member.
She's been through hell, right?
Oh, yes.
Your daughter's looking down proud of you. You know that. Just keep it going.
I know.
Keep it going.
It's like you said.
Stay with that one.
It's like you said, we have a purpose.
It's a purpose. Yeah.
Yes, it is.
She's proud of you.
Yeah, this is the White House was very smart here. They brought some angel moms to the White House press briefing. They talked about Abrego Garcia being illegally here. He was arrested and found with rolls of cash and drugs. Allegedly, he was allegedly arrested with other MS-13 members. Other judges have found he's a member of MS-13. So, and apparently he had committed domestic violence, at least had a complaint about it at one point. So he's not a saint. He's not a Maryland man, El Salvadorian man. So important to note that. So will this work? As of now, it doesn't necessarily appear to be working, at least from my vantage point. Let me give you a sense of why I believe that.
Let's talk about Trump voters and how they feel. Do they regret their vote?
I mean, this is the big question, right? I hear all these stories, all these articles. All the Trump voters, they regret what they did back in 2024. I'm here to tell you, very few of them regret what they did back in 2024. What are we talking about? Trump voters looking back at 2024. We got a new poll out. The poll was conducted this month. What percentage would change their vote to a different candidate? We're talking just 2%, just 2%. That's not even a wide spot on the road. And then there's this additional 1% who say they would rather not vote. We're talking overall under 5% might or would have changed their vote, Donald Trump voters back in 2024. And then you ask, okay, the same question to Kamala Harris voters, and it turns out the numbers are rather similar. So if there was a repeat, if folks got to be able to redo their vote that they had back in 2024, would the result be any different? I doubt it would be. I doubt it would be, or it would still be extremely close. The bottom line is, for all this talk of Trump voters regretting their vote, in the numbers, it really just doesn't show up, John.
So the stickiness with Trump voters and President Trump in this presidency, how does it compare to his first presidency?
Yeah, okay. So, I was interested in sort of a historical analogy here, sort of, does this look similar or different from back in 2017, looking at 2016? Well, in February of 2017, 4% of Trump voters say they'd shift their vote. That's actually slightly more than the 3% this time around. So, you look back, you say, okay, there's these Trump voters who really regret their vote. Historically speaking, they really don't regret their vote. And if anything, the number this time around is actually smaller than it was the first time.
This is very very heartening for me because this is something that I know that I'm speaking primarily to a pro-Trump audience at Breitbart and on the show. And I want to give you the best arguments that you can use to take your family members. It's Easter coming up this weekend, and you're going to be seeing a lot of family members. And I want to be able to give you guys some tools to take to convince people who don't always agree with us on stuff that things are going well, that Trump is really thoughtful about the tariffs and the deportations make a lot of sense for a lot of reasons. But it is heartening to know that we're holding the line here, that we get it. We understand what Trump is really all about and where he's trying to go with his agenda, and that we're not going to be cowed by some sort of media hysterics at this point. So it's very good to see that. And that's why his polling remains strong. He seemed very, very strong when I saw him. And so then the question becomes, what do the Democrats do next? What are their options in order to try to fight back? It is, as of now, there's a lot of discussion that the most likely person to become the head of the party is Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez. Data guru Nate Silver and his what does he do now? He had started 538, but I think he sold that. But he's a guru, and he and his partner who does a lot of polling and data analysis have suggested now AOC is the front runner to be the Democrat nominee for 2028. It still strikes me as far-fetched. I know she's got a loyal base of support, but it doesn't seem that she's quite as committed as she once was. She's not as wild as Jasmine Crockett, who must have gone to the bench because we haven't seen any Jasmine at all this week. I don't think we had any Jasmine this week, maybe one clip at the most. But AOC is apparently their gal right now, and I would love to see it because I think she's she'll have a very intense level of support for very few number of people, but I don't think ultimately is a deep threat on a national level. I think she's very much a regional type politician who speaks specifically to a group of left-wing socialists, particularly those who are younger and angrier. I don't think that's a ton of people. So Biden was out there, and I got some footage up. I'm not going to play it for the sake of time, but I'll tell you, he looked old, but he looked sharp. He's really skeletal, very calm in his delivery, but he referred to colored kids during his first speech since exiting the White House. And he said, I remember seeing the kids going by the time, at the time, called colored kids on a bus going by. He would talk about the term colored kids. I thought this was frowned upon, saying this stuff. I thought you weren't allowed to talk about colored kids. Biden's racism was present. It was present. I wrote about this quite a bit in Breaking Biden, how I don't think he was a hardcore racist where he, wanted to bring back slavery or something like that. I don't think he wanted to put you all back in chains, to quote a famous guy named Joe Biden. But I do think that he definitely felt like there was he felt like certain races were inferior to others. I do think that, which is racist. And the way he talks about it is very condescending, patronizing. He always has been this way. So it is, I think, it is not surprising that he wants to. I don't know why he feels compelled to tell these stories. It all can only cause him problems, but I still think he's the guy for 2028. I think he's a better candidate than AOC. Maybe AOC can be his running mate. Maybe that's the ticket, Biden, AOC. But then that means Hunter's not in the ticket. I will tell you that if any of you picked up a copy of Breaking Biden this week, I appreciate it. By a publisher, I got an odd email. Not my publisher, my agent. I got an odd email saying that we sold a bunch of Breaking Bidens last week, which is great. So thanks to all of you who did that. The way the math works, I've said this before, so forgive me if I'm a broken record, but I don't think I'm getting any more money from the Biden book. I was very well compensated. I don't think there's any more coming for that book. So if I'm recommending it because I actually believe in the content and the hard work I put into it. And I think that it is relevant in a lot of ways to understanding what's going on today. So apparently that message is working, because I got a nice congratulations for moving some units last week. So maybe it's the image right behind me. I'm moving my head to the side so you guys can see my Biden poster, those of you who are watching on the streams there. All right. Other things that are cooking. Another Democrat presidential hopeful, Letitia James, the Attorney General of New York, who campaigned to get Donald Trump and is a left-wing radical in her own right. She's got huge problems now with a mortgage fraud scandal. So she's got these homes that she doesn't live in, and then she claims they're her primary residency, despite the fact that obviously she does not make them her primary residency. One of them's in Virginia. The folks at the Daily Caller went over there to check it out. It was very obvious, not her main home, and yet she still got the gall to do it. These could be really significant scandals, and perhaps career-ending. It really could. And this is one of these things that is so important to do, that when you have someone who is using lawfare to target Trump should use whatever mechanisms he has to push back to stop them. It is only fair. We cannot play by the Marquis of Queensberry's rules, as Andrew Breitbart said. So if they're going to use the law to go after him, then they could use the law to go after her. So they got a criminal referral put out from Pam Bondi looking into this, that she has and also Todd Blanche as well, who is another attorney who's been helpful in a number of ways. Pursuant to my authority as director of the U.S. Federal Housing Finance Agency, I'm referring the matter below to Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac. And the scenario is Miss James has in multiple instances falsified bank documents, property records to acquire government-backed assistance and loans and more favorable loan terms. This could include falsifying residence status for a Norfolk, Virginia-based home in order to lower a mortgage rate, and misrepresenting property descriptions to meet stringent requirements for government-backed loans and government assistance. It really does remind you of all the things they accused Trump of doing, which Trump had not done with these the valuing of his properties, where Trump got bank loans and the banks loved to do the loans with Trump, and yet Trump was accused of falsifying bank records in order to get himself favorable deals. So it's just fighting fire with fire. You love to see it, and we'll keep you posted on that. Let's see what else we got going. So Trump versus Jerome Powell. I'll have more coverage for you of this at Breitbart.com and into next week. But Trump is mad at Jerome Powell. Trump wants rates cut. Powell is pretty independent minded, so he's going to do what he wants to do. But Trump now wants Powell gone, saying termination cannot come fast enough. He might fire him. It will be really interesting to see what happens to the stock market if he does. But Trump truth bombed. Oil prices are down. Groceries, even eggs, are down. The USA is getting rich on tariffs. He was tweeting, but Powell should have lowered interest rates like the European Central Bank long ago, and he should certainly lower them now. Powell's termination cannot come fast enough. And the Trump doesn't like Powell. I mean, we don't think Powell does a great job at Breitbart. Carney's long been a skeptic of Powell and his term. When does his term come to an end? All right, it's the Prekend. You know what the Prekend is. That's that area between lunchtime on Thursday, lunchtime on Friday, not quite the weekend. And I love to celebrate the Prekend with the grill, the best hot grill, besthotgrill.com. Solar infrared grills made in America, high quality products, stainless steel, great customer service, great people. If you get a Solar infrared grill, you can do what I'm going to do tonight, which is I'm going to get the fillets and I'm going to get them, cook them a little bit slow. Once they're up to temperature, I'm going to whip out that Solar infrared grill and I'm going to sear them off to a perfect medium rare. It's going to be fantastic. Serve them up to my family. I think I got my dad today. I think my sister's in town, and we're going to be eating like kings, thanks to the fact that I have the best hot grill on the market. Heats up to 1,000 degrees in 3 minutes, and it does lock in those perfect flavors with that unbelievable crust that I get from my Solar infrared grill. Of course, it's good for other stuff too, chicken, veggies, whatever it is. But it is the hottest grill around, and it does change, just total game changer. And you love to get these high quality made in America products, and they support good people like Talk Radio and this show, The Marlowe Show. All right, Solar infrared grills, besthotgrill.com. You know how much I love it. All right, so Jerome Powell's term comes in 2026. I don't know if Trump's going to make it that long. It's one of these things where if Trump feels like he's in a weak spot and feels like he needs to make a move, then maybe he'll push him out sooner. And if Trump is in a strong spot and feels like he could weather a little political hit and a little stock market hit from the uncertainty, he might do it. But I'll get Carney's take in more detail when he comes back on vacation, and I will promise to revisit that this week for all of you. But check out our coverage at Breitbart News. A couple other items before I go to some email. Ursula von der Leyen, the boss of the EU, has said that the West, as we know it, no longer exists because of Trump's bid to remake the world. I mean, this is great. She also said the end of history is over, whatever that means. She's calling it a transatlantic crisis. She's an Angela Merkel acolyte. She is one of the biggest globalists on the planet. the exact type of people who have overseen Europe go from a massive economic power to relatively weak economically. They're a cultural powerhouse, the culture that really drove the world's culture to a second-tier player in that regard. There is no national identities, no cohesion. It is a failing superstate is what the EU is, and it's kind of a long, slow death that's going on. But for her to suggest that the West as we know it no longer exists, well, we don't want the West to exist in the form that you guys have represented over the past several years. So really since the inception of the EU, which we worked hard at Breitbart News to make Brexit happen a decade ago, this will be a decade, coming up on a decade from Brexit. And it's one of these things where anything that undermines a superstate is good, and Trump is doing that with his tariffs because we believe in strong nations. Strong nations make good neighbors. These globalist superstates don't work. Unelected bureaucrats have not done well for the people. They've helped themselves. They've helped illegal aliens, legal migrants come from all over the world into whichever country they choose. They've helped criminals be able to become transnational organizations. But what they have not done is help the people who fund their organizations and give them their power. So I love to see it, and it's great to hear. Maybe we can save the world with love and femininity and feminine energy. We continue to get a lot of attention on Amazon, Jeff Bezos' rocket company, Blue Origin. And Katy Perry was just exquisite in her articulateness, talking about her 11 minutes on the verge of space, not quite in space, but on the verge of space. Check this out.
I hope they can see the unity that we modeled and replicate that and understand that we weren't just taking up space, we were making space for the future. And for me, like Gail said, this wasn't a ride. It wasn't a destination. It was a journey, and it was a supernatural one.
This is just unbelievable. I mean, I just love, this is a phenomenon you get that I see out in Hollywood where I call this being actressy. And she's a singer, she's not an actress. But when your performance, you cannot be normal at a certain level because you're always performing, that you can't have authenticity. Where this was not a ride. We're making space, not taking up space. We're on a journey, and it was supernatural. She went in a man-made craft that looks like a penis, and she went around up in the sky for 11 minutes, came down. And that's it. So that's all she did. It was a great publicity stunt for Blue Origin. It's like the third day of the show. We're talking about it. And for World's Richest Man, and for the male engineers and the male investors who are going to make a lot of money off this stuff. So that's what's going on. You're getting played, but it's great. It's fun to see it. Let's see where she goes.
And my journey has always been about love and belonging. And I think that we have all felt that sometimes we weren't worthy or we didn't belong in certain ways, no matter all the accolades, no matter all the studying, no matter anything.
So all the studying, she did a lot of studying. I'm sure that was why they brought Katy Perry in to do studying. No, they brought her in because they knew that we would play these clips and then give promotion. It's all engagement. All the accolades. What are the accolades is she getting? What studying did she have to do? This is just so rich. Oh, it's a beautiful thing. I love to watch it. There's something else in there I want to play. I want to play back a little bit. This is really fun.
I think that we have all felt that sometimes we weren't worthy or we didn't belong in certain ways, no matter all the accolades, no matter all the studying, no matter anything. And I think today we all said it, like, we belong here. Mm-hmm. This is where we belong, and we feel very sure of that. So I think that you'll never know the amount of love that you have inside of you to give and to...
I was going to say, even though it's not rocket science, but I was with Mrs. Dr. Marlowe through thick and thin during her medical school process and her training for her career in STEM. And I remember she would turn to me quite often, and she would say, when she was trying to come up with trying to distinguish between different types of lymphomas, and she would turn to me and say, sometimes I just really look to love during the course of my study and hope. And I'm trying to find the love and hope within all the studying that I'm doing. And it's not really about science. It's really about hope and love. And it's not about engineering. The key to STEM is the feminine energy. Are any of you dating or married to a person like this? Because I would love to hear about it, because I can't tell if this is how women are. I'm insulated from this to some degree. The women in my life are not like this. The women and I in my life are, between family members and the wonderful women who work at Breitbart News, we tend to operate on a more literal plane. We're talking about things that are actually happening, not the ethereal. In terms of why was this rocket mission important? Because it was a journey of hope and love and femininity. And I don't know anyone who talks like this. Is this a real thing, or is this her just being an actress? Because if it is, I would love to hear what it's like, and if you learn to tolerate it. Because maybe it is, if she really is a loving person, and if she was a great homemaker and was a good wife or mother, maybe you could tolerate this nonsense. But it is tough to get through a minute and 20 seconds of this. How could you, if this is a real phenomenon, if this is what women are like, I'm just really curious about this, because I have not had a conversation with a woman like this ever in my life.
Receive until the day you launch, because you're leaving all the love behind, and you're surrendering, and you're hoping that you get another chance to love them again. And so when you come back down, you're like, oh, I get another chance, and I'm going to do it.
Oh my God, now I'm crying.
Okay, so she's kind of getting at her fear of death from the plane flight, which I get that. But she's not saying it. Just say, well, I thought I was going to die, and I kissed all my dogs and cats goodbye, and I lived. So that's good. All right. I just would have thrown that out there if I was her. But look, it wouldn't have gotten nearly as much airtime on the Marlowe show if she was so literal. Some people are not thrilled about this, and it's not just the green crowd. Some women feel like that she's perhaps hijacking the feminine experience here. Check this out.
The group of rich women who went into space. Wow. Mark that under who gives a shit. These celebrities who are so disconnected from reality, I just find unbelievably annoying. And then I happen to see...
This is just some woman, I think, on TikTok that Misty pulled for me. She's got a shirt that says "not friendly" on it. She's got a beautiful late winter forest scene behind her. It looks super cool shot.
Katy Perry, when she got off the spaceship thing, and she said, "I feel so connected to love." And I thought, did you sit down and think, what is the most insufferable thing I can say? You do realize that the vast majority of people just trying to get by. All right, you're floating around in space for 11 minutes. Almost everyone else is just trying to figure out how to pay bills.
Yeah, that's it. They're trying to pay bills, make sure your kids are safe, make sure maybe you can get a better vacation this year. And Katy Perry talking about all the love she had in her 11 minutes in space, and the rich guys. Penis like a rocket ship. It really does look like a penis. I'm not just making that as a joke. If you guys see it, it's unbelievable. Clearly intentional. Great clip. That's really fun. Good pushback. Hey, look, we the people sometimes have the best commentary. Speaking of impersonating women, so the UK, I'm late to this. We covered it at Breitbart right away, of course. Their Supreme Court ruled that trans women are not women, after all. So we heard that for years. Trans women are women. It's triggering all sorts of people. A White Lotus star, a woman named Amy Lee Wood, who's takes her top off a lot and has buck teeth. She says this country is a hellhole because trans women are men. They're not women. Great. It's just all they give us extra bites of the news cycle when they act so insane. When science is restored by a court, sort of surprisingly, that the court isn't totally cooperating with the woke left, and they give us the meltdown content. I'm just so grateful for it because it gives us a nice way to round out our coverage today on the show. So I'm pretty excited about it. There's a big story about apparently we narrowly avoided war with Iran that was in the New York Times. And this was, I tracked down some of my White House sources to ask if it's true. And they said there's some truth to it, but obviously the White House wanted this out there that as a threat to Iran, but also to show a reassurance to, I think, people who don't want war, that it's not happening right now. But I'll break that down tomorrow with Peter Schweitzer, who will be here. We have a long interview with Peter for tomorrow that you're going to love. And then we head into Easter weekend. So Good Friday tomorrow. Happy Easter to all of you. And I can't thank you enough for being with me, checking out all my content that I'm producing. I'm writing the Breitbart Business Digest this week at Breitbart.com. My Breitbart Fight Club show, always fresh content. I have Brandon Darby on today, who is the top reporter on the border and cartels in the world, bar none. Always interesting to hear from him. And I guess that's it for now. It's good stuff. Thanks to producer Misty. Thanks to all of you in my audience. Talk to you next time.